A beautiful woman creates a room full of frost, but a man destroys it with ease. Manlina gave him one last chance. If he didn't hand over the ice bracelet, it would be no wonder that she would use the full strike. Yu calmly stood still. As long as he answered unsatisfactorily, countless ice picks would pierce him. Obviously, he still refused to say hurry up and finish it. There are still people waiting for him at home. Her face instantly gloomy tone is even more dissatisfied. Then don't blame me for the hard robbing. So countless ice picks attacked him. I didn't expect that the ice picks had a strange power on them. Only to see Yu Yao slightly hooked up a touch of evil smile. He instantly pressed his sword against the ground, and suddenly a fierce energy rose up. He easily broke the ice cone attack, and even had a tendency to gradually explode towards his opponent. It seems that this move really doesn't have much effect on him, but her purpose has been achieved. Linda looked ahead in fear. Those people were trying to sneak up on her. Apparently the men had already realized this, and were patiently waiting for them to attack. The ice above them began to break up, as if to smash the men below them into pancakes. As expected, Manlina used the ice burial technique, and as the name suggests, the man was about to be turned into an ice corpse. The huge ice was coming from above, but you didn't even bother to dodge it and wait for it to land. At this moment, the place where he was actually smashed into the ground by the huge ice. After the dust cleared, the ice was still there, but the ground had already been smashed to pieces. Manlina hurriedly ordered to look for the ice bracelet. Presumably he had already put it in another space ring. I didn't realize that Yao had suddenly appeared, and the ice bracelet was indeed in his space ring. But I'm not underneath the ice. I'm behind you, miss. Manlina showed an incredibly shocked expression. Her body slowly turned to the side in a stiff manner. The ice that blocked her vision slowly broke up, and Yu, who was pressed down to the ground, was actually standing in the same place unharmed. At this moment, she couldn't calm down anymore. She didn't expect that he could actually escape under her own desperate move. Yao told her to wake up. That spell was so loud that even a pig could hear it, not to mention the cold air emanating from such a large block of ice. It's impossible not to let people notice it. Manlina sensed her opponent's provocation, but she didn't dare to make any further move against him. Yu was obviously running out of patience. Are you sure you want to continue? Before she could react, her dress was unexpectedly torn apart by someone. She was shocked and ashamed. She hurried to stop it. After all, as a duke's clothes, how could it be torn? But Yu directly swung his long sword. Strange and huge energy attacked her. In a flash, her clothes directly turned into countless pieces. She screamed and subconsciously covered herself. The men in the auction room were stunned by the scene. Manlina was so humiliated that she sat down on her knees. How could things turn out like this? Fortunately, her subordinates came in time, took the robe and quickly put it on the honorable lord, but she suddenly thought of the time when she was about to attack and was hit by a man. I'm afraid this man could challenge an entire army with a single strike. Yu raised his sword impatiently. Does anyone else want the jade bracelet and the ice lotus? If not, then you can leave first. Unexpectedly, the crowd instantly shook their heads frantically, and their bodies couldn't stop trembling. My subordinate hurriedly walked forward. Lord Man, do you need me to mobilize the army to hunt down this person? She looked lost and lowered her eyes, saying she didn't want to listen to her subordinate's advice. Just now she realized that it was only a matter of his whim to destroy everyone. Yu looked at the cowering crowd and had no choice but to walk to the door alone and wield his long sword. After he slowly landed with a handsome flying body, the ice beside the door gradually began to break apart. A loud noise accompanied by the falling of the ice. The door to the auction house was opened. Yu waved his hand and said he could go out now. But Yu held the long sword in his hand and found Linda. Can you please return this sword to that person for me? Linda quickly took the sword and said, I'll take care of it. At that moment, Yu suddenly began to look her up and down, his hand resting on his chin as he pondered. Linda, you really do look much cuter with your hair tied up than with your current shoulder-length hair. The woman's small face instantly turns red. Is this what it feels like to be teased by a powerful man? She reminded the man to save any ingredients that were on the list for him the next time he came back. The crowd had their mouths open in dismay. Was this still the snake beauty Linda they knew? So he went up and quietly asked, wondering who that your excellency was just now. Miss Linda smiled confidently. So powerful man, who else could it be? After all, he's so handsome, golden and powerful. Of course he's my future husband. I didn't expect Linda to swear to the crowd that I'll never marry him in this life or the next. Yao may not know that after tonight, he will be the black-clad sword saint controlling people's life and death. He helplessly rubbed his nose. It can't be Master Kor scolding himself. It seems that he has to hurry to go back. Suddenly a sound came from inside the alley. He didn't expect this woman to be quite tough. He had to be beaten before he was honest. Kuyu is indeed a nosy man. Quickly rushed to the hutong where the sound came from. The man with the whip threw it down with all his might, cursing the woman's shamelessness. But the whip was being pulled by someone, so the man couldn't get it off. Yu was very upset with these people. If you are so violent to a girl, you will be punished by God. I didn't realize that the man with the whip had a group of accomplices, with sticks in their hands, threatening to mind their own business. Apparently, you can't stand threats, so he reached out his hand and pulled hard. The man with the whip became terrified and flew to the side. With one easy blow, you shattered the man's body into pieces. Who among the punks present was not convinced? The man with the whip opened his mouth wide and foamed at the mouth, losing consciousness in an instant. The punks were shocked. Their jaws almost fell to the ground. Silence is the best sound. Yao handsomely inserted his hands into his pockets. What did you say just now? The wind is too strong. I didn't hear it clearly. The punks laughed out of embarrassment and said it was time to go back. It would be bad if they met criminals. So a large group of people scrambled to escape, fearing that the man would strike again. After you finished dealing with these scumbags, he softly told the other side that they were all gone and it was fine. Before he could finish, his eyes widened in disbelief. Why are you here? At this time the moonlight has covered the whole room, but the room is incredibly bright. Core was a bit panicked. Why hasn't this guy you come back yet? It can't be that he's in some kind of trouble, right? So she led Sylph to the door, saying that she should go and look for him herself. But just as she reached out her hand to open the door, someone else opened it beforehand. Kagome suddenly froze in place, but she couldn't take her eyes off the two people outside. I didn't expect that Yui would bring Eggle here, but why is she so desolate? After filling her stomach, Agur explained to them that Elsa had disappeared. To be precise, Aisha had suddenly told her she wanted to take a break from school, but she hadn't been able to contact her since she left. She must be in some kind of trouble. That's why she came to them to check on Aisha's condition. You suddenly sank into deep thought on the sidelines. But wasn't there anything out of the ordinary before she left school? Eggle suddenly recalled the sad expression on Aisha's face when she said goodbye. So at dawn, they got a carriage and waited at the door. You took out the bottle filled with potion and handed it to Kagome, saying that it was a potion he made himself and that it was safe to drink. Although it can't restore all the magic power immediately, it can still effectively increase the speed of recovery. It's a shame she had to go back to deal with the death of Acemans. Otherwise we could have checked out Elsa's house together. But the way things are going, we need to stay as far away from the three families as possible. And Eggle is likely to just have the same family name. Her full name is Gillisis, the same surname as one of the three families, the generals. But even if Eggle is a shogun, it doesn't change the fact that she's our friend. Kagome had expected him to say that, so she planned to go back to school first. In fact, she was very relieved to leave Eggle in Yao's hands, but she felt a little uneasy in her heart. There was nothing wrong with Agur. She was sleeping soundly in the carriage. Yu was cowering in the corner alone, regretting that she really wanted to take back what she had said before, but it's hard for her to come all the way from the school. Otherwise she wouldn't be sleeping soundly. In fact, that night in the alley, the walls had been smashed to pieces by the punks. Yu was also shocked to see a friend from school in a place like this. Eggle raised her head in surprise at the sound and looked at the man who saved her with a stunned expression. When she saw him, she burst into tears. As expected, she violently jumped into Yu's embrace and said with an overwhelming devastation that she had finally found them. But why are you the only one looking for us? Are you all right? Are you hurt? Eggle suddenly opened her eyes wide. Her face turned red. After that, she pushed Yu's hands away, and shyly ran 2 steps forward and turned around without looking at him. She hugged herself tightly and said that she was fine, but she had something very important to tell Kagome-sensei. Eggle shyly turned her head sideways and reminded the man to hurry up and take me to see Kagome-sensei. But Kanyu notices the wound on her shoulder. The blood is still bubbling from the torn wound of her clothes. He had a moment of anger to kill all those punks, but he held himself back. At that time, the incident was like this. Also really hard for her to run to such a faraway place to come. So sleep well tonight. With him there will be no one to come and disturb. After 2 days of traveling, the carriage arrived at the gates of the Lawrence Manor in Jursta City. The early morning breeze was blowing, rustling the weeds in front of the entrance, but the interior of the luxurious manor before them was empty and the walls were badly damaged. Is this really the Lawrence Manor? But we must not be going in the wrong direction. It seems that the Lawrence family, who used to live here, disappeared more than 10 years ago. Over time, the Lawrence house has fallen into disuse. When they walked inside and looked around, it looked like it hadn't been lived in for a long time. At that moment, something suddenly fell from the wall and caught their eyes. Eggle tried to move forward to see what looked like a piece of paper covering a picture frame inside. Despite the danger, she pulls the paper away from the wall in front of her. They were all shocked and kept thinking about who the two people in the portrait were. Is this Elsa's mother and father? But the man's appearance has been shattered to pieces. They weren't sure, but the only thing they knew for sure was that the woman in the portrait was definitely not Elsa. We'll stay here for a few days and see if we can find out what happened at Lawrence Hall. At that moment, Egil suddenly remembered that Elsa had given her something. She quickly searched her body for something Elsa had asked her to do before she said goodbye. She held the small wooden box with both hands, indicating that this is the thing to be handed over to Yao. The man took his friend to the tavern, and there was a delicate wooden box on the table. Is this the strange ring that Elsa asked you to entrust to me? But the design on the ring isn't Lawrence's. Whose could it be? We've asked around the city's unions, but they've never seen a ring with this design on it. But then the waiter realized it was the Earl's family ring. The owner of this ring was a nobleman of great elegance, and she remembered how charming he was. Although I was comforting my friend at the time, it didn't stop me from seeing this ring at all. You couldn't help but look at Egil. They exchanged glances and agreed on the same meaning, but the waiter was a bit angry. That nobleman seemed to be more interested in Lilith. If they remember correctly, Elsa's mother's name was Lilith. The Lilith you mentioned, is she the one who disappeared from Lawrence Hall? But the waiter thinks that Lilith fell in love at first sight with the Earl and ran away with the child. You hurriedly pulled back the woman who let her thoughts fly. Then I wonder where this Earl is now. She remembered that the Count's territory was in the southeastern part of the empire. In any case, it was a long way away from here. Before she could finish her thought, she was interrupted by a customer who wanted a dozen beers. She hurriedly reminded him that the whole empire has been rumored to be haunted by demons in the southeast. You looked ahead and thought, was Aisha really taken to that kind of place? Agir looked at him with a serious face, his tone desperate for his help. Can you teach me how to fight? If we really meet the demons, my magic power won't be of much help. I'll probably slow you down, but I still want to find Elsa with you. Obviously, Yao is full of questions about this. What is fighting spirit? It's different from the elemental magic that relies on talent. It's a kind of magic that can be learned through training and cultivation. But how come you don't know what fighting spirit is? Didn't you use fighting spirit to defeat Kyle before? You suddenly realized that he was revealing something, so he hastened to say that he was testing her. Agir had already believed in him, so if I can answer it, can you teach me? Yu awkwardly stretched out his finger. Since the power released is very similar, then we can try it out. At this moment, the holy floating building was illuminated by the sunlight, as if it was coated with a layer of light. I didn't expect the room to be in a mess. Countless books and documents were thrown around randomly. In addition to the hellfire, Acemans had also collected apostle-related items and put them here. Kegon looked at the drawer in front of her, but who could have taken it away by breaking the restraints? If someone stole it, it's even more important that the public doesn't know about his death. Otherwise, the Empire would be in even more danger. So she could only look down and sigh helplessly. So she took out the magic potion that Yao had given her. After all, the 5 schools competition was coming up soon. She didn't know if the two of them would be able to make it back after finding Elsa. At this moment, the two of them, who were worried by Kegom, were traveling on the road in the carriage. Egil shyly covered her mouth, her body kneeling on the seat, and shouted in a delicate voice, "No! Yu is not threatened at all. If he is not allowed to touch there, he is more likely to try it." He quickly reached out his hand and touched it upwards. The temperature inside the carriage gradually increased. Egil suddenly looked at him with sideways eyes, trying to open her mouth to stop his touching. Suddenly a foot flew out and kicked the man directly to the other side of the carriage. Yu angrily swung his fist. "I helped you to use external force to guide your fighting chi. How dare you kick me?" Egil kept rolling happily and apologized to him. He was too ticklish and couldn't hold it back. Yu did not accept this apology, and angrily wanted to let Sylph judge him. Unexpectedly, Sylph directly ignored him, indicating that she was in a situation of do not look, do not listen, and so another round of fighting began in the carriage, with the coachman lamenting the stamina of the young men. 2 weeks later, time flew by, and they arrived in the city the tavern clerk had told them about, Nornia. Egil looked around with suspicion. Is this the center of Nornia? The streets of the town were silent and all the shops were closed. Pedestrians in black robes walked along the streets, but no one spoke. The black-robed man looked at the carriage in front of him, and looked thoughtful for a moment. Egil poked the man. "We may have come to the wrong place. How could Elsa live in such a place? But the coachman can't be wrong. But it's strange that the grocery shops are not open here. The front is quite busy. Let's get off there and take a look. The red house in front of us has an Adventurers Association on the door plate. People are sitting in front of the door, chatting and drinking. I didn't realize that there were so many people waiting to enter the Adventurers Guild here. So she went up to the front desk and asked if there was an earl named Telder here. The lady at the front desk was indeed very enthusiastic. Yes, but what do you want with the Count? Agar unguardedly said out loud and was suddenly quickly interrupted by Yu. If Aisha's mother really remarried to the Count and the people of another city thought that they had disappeared, that means Aisha's mother is trying to hide it. So we can't ask directly. So he quickly moved forward to explain. In fact, we found the Earl's ring and wanted to give it back to His Excellency. What we don't know is where the Count lives now. The Count's castle is in the far suburbs. To get there you have to go through the Nanya forest. Just something happened over there. They listened in silence as the beautiful woman explained, and the result was surprising. Egil cried out in disbelief. Are there really demons here? In fact, since half a year ago, the beasts in this area have become more and more numerous, and then there were rumors that there were demons in the area. It wasn't until recently that they were finally identified, so adventurers came here to hunt them. Although this is the Count's territory, the Count has not reacted to this matter. The bounty is issued by the association, and killing a demon is worth 5 million gold coins. If I help the Earl solve these problems, will he marry Elsa to me? But Agar doesn't believe in it. The demons have long been extinct. How can they appear again? But Beauty doesn't know the situation either. The 100-member hunting group sent out by the association today hasn't returned yet. You suddenly remembered that before this generation of human civilization, the demons and humans coexisted harmoniously, but then war broke out. In the end, there was a war between Orma, who helped the humans, and Capaxis, who supported the demons. After the war, they disappeared, and the demons never appeared in the human world again. If it wasn't for these two guys fighting fiercely, human beings wouldn't be afraid of the apostles like this. At this time in the forest of Nonia, what is the situation now? I saw countless human corpses in the forest, and almost all of the blood on the ground came from them. I didn't think there were any survivors here. He went crazy and quickly fled forward, but a few black shadows appeared behind him. He was so scared that he didn't even care to look at his surroundings. It's true that in the moment of panic, people often trip over something. The man fell forward uncontrollably and lost his desire to escape. After he fell, several fierce beasts appeared behind him. He sat down on his arse and shivered, pleading with them not to kill him. But the beasts were not merciful, let alone the man they hated the most. So it claws down, and the trees around the man are instantly splattered with drops of blood. The beast's long claws were still dripping blood, seemingly displeased with the smell of the human. But far away from the town center the sun shone brightly, a peaceful and beautiful time of the year. The 100-member group sent out to hunt is actually only hunting a demon werewolf. Yu waved his hand dismissively. Just one werewolf can be solved with 1 or 2 swords. The beauty at the front desk was surprised. How could it be solved in a couple of swords? She looked up and down at the man in front of her. Could it be that you are a gold-level adventurer or above? But you innocently held up the iron plate and said he was just a black iron. When the crowd heard this, they laughed and taunted him not to just drink but also to eat some food. This werewolf is cunning and fast, and is said to be able to manipulate shadow magic. Aren't werewolves a bunch of simple-minded demons? How come they learned magic after they disappeared and came back? The black-robed man told Yao to take his girlfriend home. After all, if you don't know anything, you'll get yourself killed. But listening to them, that one seems to be very strong. Should we find another route? But you told her to be completely at ease. Even if she can use magic, it's only a matter of a few more swords. Now that we know where the Count's castle is, we should hurry and find it. The outskirts of the forest of Nonia are incredibly eerie. Egil was carrying a machete. We should not come back tomorrow. The roads are not easy to walk at night. No sooner had her fears subsided than there was a rustling in the bushes, so she looked around furiously to see who was there. She was all ready to go when she realized that a white rabbit had jumped out of the bushes. Egil was relieved. She had been worried for nothing, but it was a rabbit. What she didn't realize was that there was a beast behind her trying to sneak up on her. This kind of retarded little trick, how can it be Yao Yao? Only to see that he has long been aware of the rapid look at the past, and decisively kicked at it, causing its body to fly out quickly. It was actually a black wild leopard. Fortunately, it had been injured and smashed to the side. Unexpectedly, this leopard's body gradually disappeared after it fell down. Yu's face was gloomy as he looked towards the panther. The presence of this kind of thing meant that the werewolves were there as well. After all, this kind of shadow leopard, only the demon race would raise magical beasts. Sure enough, there was another rustling in the bushes. Countless shadow leopards and werewolves had actually come to this place. Egil raised his machete in fear and quickly hid behind you. The werewolf with countless shadow leopards is slowly walking towards them with a sense of oppression. I never thought that a human would recognize our shadow panther. At the same time, the shadow leopards also opened their mouths to howl fiercely in a coordinated manner. The wolves looked the men over before proposing to join them and unite the human continent. Apparently they didn't care about the wolves' threats, which angered the wolves to no end, but they wouldn't join them, and they wouldn't allow them to rule the human race. The werewolves burst out laughing. You think you can stop us? You know the hunting group you sent out before was killed by us without a single one left. You looked at it indifferently. Do you want me to pick you up and lift you high? The werewolf was directly annoyed. How dare he make fun of the powerful and honorable demon race? So he decisively ordered the shadow panther to attack. Don't show any mercy to them. You was so confident that he wanted Egil to take the lead. Unexpectedly, she was very excited. It was finally time for her to take the lead. The werewolf was a bit surprised. Wasn't this woman scared to death just now? Obviously no one would answer his question. Egil had already picked up her weapon and gathered her magical energy. Suddenly she looked at the beast with a sharp look in her eyes. As expected, she learnt the fighting chi that Yao had taught her, and directly unleashed powerful energy towards the shadow leopard. In an instant, they were cut in half without any resistance. After they fell down helplessly, their bodies began to split again and again. The werewolf's shocked look was really stupid. At this point it didn't know what to do. Egil let out a breath of air, not in vain to pretend to be scared for so long. The werewolf instantly understood. You guys are trying to trick me to come up before acting, right? You pretended to be surprised. It seems that you still have some brains in your body. The Wolf King's doubtful voice rang out. Truly a bold human. So you've been acting from the beginning to the end, just to trick me out. You waved his hand to show that it's no big deal. We are just acting on our way. If I finish you off, not only can I get the reward money, maybe Elsa will even marry me. The demon werewolf was completely ignored and kept shouting, damn it, if you want to kill it, why do you have to do it as an act? If you had joined the Demon King's army, you might have been spared, but now you don't have that chance. So he quickly attacked the human, but the man stood still and didn't move. Then he suddenly raised his foot and moved it up and down, stretching his calf. Then he kicked the werewolf in the stomach, sending it flying with no resistance at all. The werewolf's eyes widened and he spat out blood. How could he be hurt by a small human? But its body had already fallen backward. It was only because of its own hard grip on the ground that it didn't fall down. You said that he had something to ask the werewolf, or leave it to him to solve the problem. The werewolf's eyes looked at them with a blank stare. Obviously it knew the human's plan well. They had deliberately provoked it, in order to make it reveal its physical flaws. I didn't realize that you guys were really good at it, so I won't show any mercy next time. So it frantically threw up its head and roared, and a pile of black magic gathered inside its raised paw. With a strange sound, the werewolf's body gradually began to change. Agir said, "Oh no! What the hell is that smoke?" You had already recognized this thing. Who had given it the shadow magic of the underworld? Apparently the werewolf rushed over in a complete frenzy. If you want to know, go to the underworld and ask it. You easily dodged its attack and said that going to the underworld wasn't impossible either. Before he could finish his sentence, the werewolf attacked again with its long claws and terrorized him. He easily dodged it again and said that there is a very annoying guy there. The werewolf charged at him again, and opened its bloody mouth and extended its claws to crush him. He dodged it again with ease, but its magic had already smashed the ground to pieces. The werewolf was puzzled and shocked. He couldn't even touch his sleeve. At this moment, Yu's voice rang out, indicating that after half a day's thought it would be more convenient to ask it. But the werewolf was very disdainful. You asked me to answer the question and I answered it. Isn't it very disgraceful? Yu was suddenly a bit annoyed that this werewolf didn't understand human language, so he decided not to focus on dodging, and instantly transformed his long sword. At the same time, he attacked the werewolf with a ferocious face, the corner of his mouth hooked up with a bad smile. The werewolf was already a bit tired. His furry body was actually sweating coldly. As expected, it was too late to dodge, and a huge energy slashed at its center. The werewolf gritted its teeth and tried to resist, but the impact of the energy left it at a loss. The huge energy had already reached Agir's side, and she had to rush to block it. The forest suddenly lit up like day, followed by a huge explosion of energy. The werewolf stood frozen in place, awaiting the judgment of the man across from him. Unexpectedly, after this huge energy, it made it sit down on its knees on the ground. It looked blankly at the tip of the sword in front of it, welcoming its own death. Yao was standing in front of it handsomely. So do you want face or life? I spared your life and you obeyed me. Then tell me, what is the situation of the demon race next? The werewolf said that their demon tribe under the leadership of the emperor sent me to spy on the human situation. Originally, they thought the humans were not as strong as the demons, so they were going to take this place first. Afterwards, he was going back to inform the army, who knew that he would meet the two of them. But you want to return to the human continent. Where is the current habitat? Obviously this cannot be exposed casually, but its life and death is in front of the man's thoughts. In fact, it's an adult who opened up a small world for us to recuperate in. Egil was curious to know who was so powerful as to open a world, but the Lord has always said not to reveal his identity. He is the savior of the demon race, but this seems like the kind of thing Omar would do. After all, he's got a million different skills, so why did he change now and let the demons come back to invade the humans? Before the werewolf's reply, Yu's expression became incredibly tense. Aegir also sensed his change, and asked with concern about what had happened. Someone actually opened the gate of the realm, which is the gateway to every world. At this moment, the screen came to a room, and the light inside was brightly lit. A woman walked up to the door and knocked gently, waiting for a response. So she slowly opens the door and looks at her baby girl inside. It was Elsa's mother, staring at her with her arms folded across her chest. She had been given a gift by a lord, who was waiting for her in the hall. Elsa had to get up and put down the red roses, saying that she would go down as soon as she was cleaned up. She looked at the roses for a long time, and then she went to the strange lord without looking back. But she put the flowers in a box, as if she was thinking of someone. Meanwhile, in the forest, the moon was already high in the sky. The world he had just sensed through the gate of the realm revealed a strange aura. At that moment, Aegir walked up to him and gently woke up someone who was still in deep thought. If you want to report to that lord, you have to open the realm gate or someone to pass it on. Right. The werewolf nodded heavily. We can't go straight back to the magic realm, so there is a transmitter here. So you needed it to take himself to the messenger so he could pass a message to the ruler. But there's a place to go first. I didn't expect the werewolf to follow obediently behind me. She said that if you go in this direction, you will reach the castle. The werewolf asked if the castle was the one by the sea. I didn't realize that place was actually occupied by their messenger. If Elsa lives in that castle, is that ring her distress signal? Yu's face instantly sank, thinking that what she said made sense. In that case, he quickly came behind Aegir. He directly picked her up by the waist with ease, stating that he would now hurry a little to set off. As he carried the woman forward, he also did not forget to remind the werewolves behind him to follow him. So they soon arrived at the castle by the sea, with huge waves lapping at the rocks. But when they arrived at their destination, Yao was a gentleman and kneeled down. He gently lowered Egil to show that they had arrived here, but the castle in front of them looks very gloomy. At this moment, someone is walking slowly. They looked up instantly to see who had seen them so quickly. They didn't realize it was a human. Greeting them both and knowing they were coming, he took a respectful stance and invited them to join him in the castle. But the waves below are stronger, and the castle is full of eerie signs. The man is still inviting them in. After all, it's their lord who gave the order. Egil clearly had his wits about him. This couldn't be a trap set by the summoner, could it? But they weren't sure. But they were going to go in and find out what they wanted. So they walked slowly forward and entered the darkened castle. I didn't realize that His Excellency had been waiting for a long time and wanted them to go to the parlor as soon as possible. Suddenly he looked at something strange with a cold, sharp look on his face. Egil hid behind him in fear, asking in a soft voice what happened. Yu helplessly waved his hand, saying that he was just dazed for a while. She thought there was something important, but she seemed to smell a strange fragrance. But this kind of scent is as good as nothing. It's better to go up the stairs first. The castle was brightly lit, with portraits of men on the walls. The subordinate led them to the parlor, and their mission was complete. As expected, the lord put down his cup of tea and told his subordinates to leave if they had completed their tasks. She smiled as she rose to greet the two guests who had traveled from afar. She slowly walked towards them, welcoming them with a calm and collected manner. Even the knowledgeable Yu was stunned for a moment at this moment. Apparently Egil wasn't so calm, and shouted out to Elsa in shock. But she explained to the crowd that no, she was Elsa's mother, Lilith. So Aegir breathed a sigh of relief. so it was really remarriage and not disappearance. But Lilith walks up to him. I guess you're the boy who stole my daughter's heart. You didn't care about anything else. He just wanted to ask where Aisha was now. Lilith smiled coldly and reached out to him. If you want to take my daughter, I'm afraid you can't, but if you want to have a night of fun, I can accompany you. You suddenly became unhappy. His expression became more and more serious. He suddenly grabbed Lilith's wrist, stopping the woman's energy that wanted to move towards him. I didn't realize that she was a chimera. Their hunting range is really extensive. Egil was incredibly surprised. Wasn't she Elsa's mother? Was she a summoner? However, she said she was not, but she was curious how you found out her identity. In fact, inviting us in right after arriving at the castle. Only magic perception can do that. How can you explain that after more than 10 years? You look the same as before, and the charm magic you unleashed just now confirms my suspicion. It's true that she's a chimera, but Elsa is also her daughter, only she's a half-blood. As a reward for blocking her attack, Elsa was actually in the room at the end of the first floor, so he calmly turned around to leave, not forgetting to pull Egil up beside him, but she didn't intend to go with him. After all, she didn't want to be a light bulb. You looked around incredulously. Are you sure you want to stay here and wait for us? Lilith suddenly reassured him, saying that she would definitely not hurt her. After all, it's late at night. I advise you to go and see Aisha as soon as possible, otherwise she'll be asleep. You told Agir to be careful, and to call out to him immediately if anything happens. I didn't expect Lilith to be disappointed. What would happen later on? You acted quickly and went to the first floor to check if Elsa was sleeping, but he found that the door was not closed, so he had to go in and observe. So he walked into the room with light steps, but he found that there was no one in the big room. Obviously, Yao is very excited. Is this the room of a beautiful girl? But before he could be happy, he found a red rose beside the table. This is the rose he gave to Elsa before he left for the Magic Exchange Conference. Before he finished thinking, the door behind him suddenly opened. You look back with some surprise. He didn't expect to see such an erotic scene. His beloved Elsa opened the door. Water droplets were still sliding down on her white body.